Welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. Today we're going to talk about the Fear and Greed Index, indecision within the crypto market, and two possible outcomes for the next week or so. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and leave a comment below. So there's a lot going on in the crypto market right now. We have the SEC putting lawsuits against Coinbase and Binance, Coinbase for selling unregistered securities, and Binance for much more severe allegations. And the crypto market initially had a big reaction to that, with Bitcoin dropping $2,000 in a very short time frame. Also, along with that, a lot of alts were named as securities like Solana, Polygon, Filecoin, Sandbox, Decentraland, and some others. And those also saw some major downside price action off of that news. And in this case, the Fear and Greed Index isn't really helping us out either, because the market has a great deal of indecision in it right now, which is clearly reflected by the Fear and Greed Index beyond what we see in price action. So if you happen to be new to the Fear and Greed Index, it essentially is a range from 0 to 100 that tells kind of where people's sentiment is about the market itself. This particular one is on Bitcoin. 0 being that sentiment's very bad, and 100 being sentiment is over the top. And generally, those kind of give you an idea on the general state of the market, even from a buying and selling perspective. When something is high up in the greed index, it kind of gives us an indication, hey, we need to be looking at potentially offloading some of this, and vice versa. When the fear is all the way down at the bottom, we kind of think, oh, it might be a good time to get into the market. This particular time frame that we're looking at is the maximum time frame that goes all the way back to February 1st, 2018. And you can see there are definitely periods where there was a lot of greed in the market, and there were definitely periods, which I would say are more, where there was a lot of fear in the market. Looking at greed here in June 2019, that was a point. Another one here in December 2020. Another one here in February 2021. And then as far as fear is concerned, we have lows here at like 33 in August 2019, a reading of 10 in March 2020, which would have been the flu dump. And then May 2021, that's whenever the initial dump happened after the first peak in that cycle. And then we actually had a reading of 9 or 8 here in 2022, which would have been around the time I believe FTX happened, or maybe that was the Terra Luna one. But there have been some extreme lows, and those generally present good buying opportunities. However, it's really not helping us out right now. This is the 1 month view, and it's almost completely flat. It ranges from 45 to 52, I think. It's done absolutely nothing, and price has been somewhat boring at times and somewhat volatile at times, but there's just a lot of indecision in the market right now, and there's really nothing that can explain that better than the Fear and Greed Index vacillating around 50. So the real question is, where does that leave us right now? Well, we can see right here, whenever this SEC stuff happened, the price dumped from 27.5 to 25.4 on Bitcoin, and then just a few hours later rebounded all the way back up to 27.4. which is just barely below that peak here on this candle. And we can see that price is starting to form a cup and handle. Generally, a cup and handle pattern, you would want to see something that's not quite as deep as this, in my opinion, for the handle, but it's also not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not going to call this bullish, and I'm not going to call it bearish, but I am going to present kind of what I think the two possible scenarios are, and we'll start with the downside, actually. So here on the weekly chart, we have some things to look at. First, we have this level of resistance here, this trendline level of resistance that's currently sitting around, well, it's marked here around 27.5. I'm going to move it up a little bit. It's actually sitting around 28.2 is where it is. So there's big overhead resistance here at 28.2. Interestingly enough, we're also sitting right on top and between a lot of things. We're sitting under the top side of the Gaussian channel. We're sitting under the EMA 9 at 27,214, which I believe is one of the most important things for this particular part of the market to be watching to see where we are in relation to the EMA 9. We're also sitting just above the 200 SMA, which is another very important thing to hold. If I was to pick something to continue upside, I would say that this 200 SMA needs to hold at 26,441. We're also just on top of the bull market support band and also the silver cross band. which is all kind of has confluence right here in this area between roughly 26.4 and 25.8. Those are two areas to hold. If we were to break below 25.8, for me, I would be looking at a move back down to 24,000. And the reason for that, and I think it would be a quick wick actually, the reason for that is because the mean of the Gaussian channel is sitting right here at 24,865, but there's a golden pocket off of this move from this swing low to this swing high. There's a golden pocket at 23,938. And generally, big even numbers are important. And what people like to do is set a limit order like 1 to 2% above a big even, just to make sure that they're able to get some. And so I would be looking at 24.2 actually. If we were to make a move down, I think it would be a quick wick below the mean of the Gaussian channel down to 24.2 and then a bounce. And then the mean of the Gaussian channel would then be resistance. We would have to immediately get back up past 24.8 to have any viability for continued upside. And then as far as upside is concerned, what I would like to see is Bitcoin come up here and test that resistance line at 28.2, maybe come down to test this other line that would then be support around 27.5 or something like that, and then make a continued move up past the top of the Gaussian channel. It's really imperative that we break 28.2 and then break the Gaussian channel, the top of the Gaussian channel, to have that third leg up that we've been considering. And I do think it needs to happen in the next few weeks. I think time is running out for something like this, and downside is probably more likely at this point, but you never know with these markets what's going to happen. There could be a good piece of news that comes out tomorrow that sends Bitcoin up to 37K. You just never know. But right now, I would say I favor the downside a little bit more. But let's look at some other indicators here real quick and see what's going on. One thing to note is we do have a potential big move here on the 5-day BBWP. You can see that the blue line has crossed above the white line. The blue line sitting at 4.37%. Generally, when that line crosses up to 10% area and is above the white line, there's a big move that follows the direction of the stochastic oscillator, which is currently just crossed up. The K line is crossed up the D line, trying to make a decision on which way it wants to go from here. But either way, whether it goes up or it goes down, an expansion off of this BBWP could be a big move, whether it's up or down. It's really hard to determine right now. We don't know because of the way that everything is just kind of moving sideways and bouncing up and down inside of a range. In fact, this is something that's very rare that has not happened since July of 2020. BBWP on the weekly has reached a point of extremes. It's all the way down at the bottom, as contracted as it possibly can be. And interestingly enough, the stochastic RSI is also making its way down to the oversold area. And imagine what would happen if that were to cross up in conjunction with expansion on the BBWP. That could be a very, very, very large move that gets us up to that 37 to 47K area that I've been talking about for several weeks now. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm not a perma bull, nothing like that. I'm just saying that based off the weekly, it's more likely that this would cross up than to continue moving down. But it definitely 100% could continue to move down, and then the BBWP cross up and expand while price goes down. That's totally feasible as well. I think if that were to happen, that would be the move that we would be looking for, down to probably somewhere 19 to 20K, somewhere in that area. That would be a big, big correction if that were to happen and BBWP expanded to the downside. Yesterday was not a favorable close either. We closed around 26.3, which was below the 200 SMA. But since this morning, we have rebounded and gone above the 200 SMA, currently sitting at 26,545. So in the short term on this daily chart, looking at the stochastic, it has crossed up. It has not closed yet, but it has crossed up. On the 4-hour chart, the same thing. It did cross up. Now it's starting to cross back down. Let's see what happens. Well, there's only 2 minutes left until this candle closes, so it's very likely that this cross down happens here on the 4-hour, but it's just, there's a lot of indecision right now. So what I'm saying is be very careful. If you're trading, if you're looking at your spot positions, be very, very careful and make wise decisions. Now is the time to watch and be alert of what's happening, rather than just saying, I'm going to let it make a decision. That's not what you should be. You should be watching pretty closely right now and making a move as soon as you feel pretty confident in what's going on. And of course, as always, none of this is financial advice. Just want to put that out there. Also looking at some of my favorite altcoins, which unfortunately most of were named as securities in Gary's little revenge lawsuit. None of these, I really don't think these are securities, but I think it was done in retaliation to the House of Representatives bill that was introduced, which was somewhat counteractive to Gary's current actions. You can see the Filecoin here was one of those. It was at $5 and went all the way down to $3.98. Currently sitting at $4.12. Don't think this is probably a safe place to be right now. I do think it's still a good coin. It's still great for the next run. But at this point, I really think it's probably better to be in Bitcoin. Same goes with Polygon. Polygon was at 97 cents, went all the way down to 75 cents, and is currently hovering around 78 cents. Cardano was another one named, was sitting up here on 38 cents, dumped all the way to 31. So not looking good there either. And the list goes on with the other coins as well. One that was not named was Chainlink, so I am still holding that Chainlink that I have. Maybe see an expansion to the top of this range that it's been in before unloading that. That's just what I'm doing. But right now, I definitely think Bitcoin is the safer play. And I do think that the ETH Bitcoin pair is overextended. So if I was to hold anything right now, for the long term, it would be Bitcoin, but I'm actually kind of looking to get out of everything at this next leg up if it comes. If it doesn't come, I'm still looking to get out of everything to make sure that I can capitalize as much as possible when price does rest toward probably the next halving. So hopefully that was some decent insight into the fear and greed index and the general indecision in the market right now. If you found the content useful, please hit the subscribe button. Please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. I want to definitely respond as well. Hit the like button and let me know what your thoughts are on this. Drop a comment letting me know what you think Bitcoin's going to do. Safe trading, and we'll see you in the next video.